This is difficult. This is not something that any officer wants to encounter.
Captain Adam Yeager is talking about the loss of a 17-year-old Hoopa student and the severe injuries his officer sustained during an incident near Willow Creek early yesterday morning. Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight for North Coast News, KAEF, ABC 23 News at 6. I'm Lindsay Hausman. Today, officers with the California Highway Patrol and the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office came together to jointly discuss what transpired on Highway 299 near Blue Jay Lane yesterday morning between a CHP officer and a 17-year-old Hoopa male. Officers laid out the events of what happened to the best of their ability, releasing as many details as they could pending the investigation. North Coast News KAEF ABC 23's Candace Chambers was there. She joins me live in the studio with what officers had to say. Candace.
Lindsay, we now have a clearer picture of exactly what happened and the extent of the injuries the officer got during the encounter. Captain Adam Yeager with CHP says it all started early yesterday morning around 1:30 from a report of a car that crashed into a pole. When the officer arrived, he met with the driver of the car for a brief moment, and then they walked to the back of the patrol car. At that point, the officer was hit with a machete. He blocked the hit thinking it was a baton with his left hand. The captain says the officer has severe injuries to his hand, arm, and face. Following the attack, the officer fired his weapon towards the driver of that car who attacked him. At that point, the officer got back into his car, locked the doors, and called for backup. The captain says another officer arrived within 10 minutes. He found the driver of the car now laying on the ground near his crashed car without clothes on and naked. The second officer tried to get him to put his hands behind his back. He refused. The second officer then tased the driver of the car, trying to subdue him because he was acting very erratic. The captain says 2 people in passing helped the second officer handcuff the driver of the crashed car, and it was after that and life-saving efforts the driver succumbed to his injuries. The officer injured was found and taken to an area hospital before being flown to UC Davis for medical care. As for the driver, the captain says it was a 17-year-old Hoopa male and says this entire situation is tragic.
We're embedded in that community. We do things at the high school. We're part of that's what Willow Creek Resident Post is about. My officers live there. They know people. It's terrible. Our hearts go out to the family of this young man. It's terrible. But it's a terrible thing that happened. There's nothing we can do about it at this point.
The captain says that the officer who was hurt had just transferred to the Willow Creek area. He'd only been there since December 2nd. He transferred from the Bay Area. The second officer who showed up on the scene has been with CHP for 20 years. The Critical Incident Response Team is currently investigating this case. Right now, officers are saying that they hope to release more information next week, but their primary focus is the investigation and making sure those involved are okay. Of course, we will continue to bring you the very latest information as it becomes available. Live in the studio, Candace Chambers, North Coast News, KAEF, ABC 23.
All right, thank you, Candace. And today we are learning more about the 17-year-old male who was involved in that officer-involved shooting. North Coast News knows his identity, but we have chosen not to release it at this time pending the investigation. But what we've learned is that everyone in Hoopa knew him and is taken aback over what happened. North Coast News KAEF ABC 23's Tyler Dahlgren spent all day in Hoopa talking to people there. He joins me now live in the newsroom with what he's learned. Tyler.
Lindsay, I spoke to nearly a dozen people. They all tell me that he was a good kid, and they say this is out of character. The 17-year-old male is from Hoopa. He went to Hoopa Valley High School, and he played football while he was there. And people tell me he was also into music, saying it runs in his family. People tell me that this is totally out of character for him. His cousin, who didn't want to be identified, has this to say to us.
He grew up around here. Everybody knew him as a good kid, and not as somebody not as a killer or or is somebody who'd go out and do that. It was kind of if you look at, he doesn't have no record or anything like that. He was quiet, kind of, but if he was his friend, he'd talk to you. He was really polite and respectful and just a good person to be around, He's not ignorant or anything like that. he's just a good-hearted kid.
His cousin also told me that he was a good student and again reiterated the fact this wasn't like him. Of course, Hoopa Valley schools were closed today and all activities were canceled. When asked why, we were told it was because it's right before the winter break and this will give people time to grieve. Live in the newsroom, Tyler Dahlgren, North Coast News, KAEF, ABC 23.
All right, thank you very much, Tyler. Of course, we will continue to follow the latest developments in this story.